If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent. For the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state.
Of the 2016 election, researchers released a report warning about a strange propaganda technique.
Another day, another lie, another conspiracy theory, another falsehood.
They called it the fire hose of falsehood, when a propagandist bombards people with more lies than they can possibly keep up with.
Why all these lies? Why is it lie after lie after lie?
According to the report, these lies don't have to be believable.
It wasn't just a lie, it was such a bad, obvious lie.
Researchers found that even obvious lies had the potential to be highly effective at shaping public opinion.
I mean, he just says things, and then they are the truth.
Fascinatingly, the term propaganda has its roots in the Catholic Church. Turns out, the Catholic Church played a significant role in the colonization and the evangelization of the New World, particularly in Latin America. The arrival of Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors in the 16th century brought with them Catholic missionaries who sought to convert the indigenous peoples to Christianity, which really wasn't Christianity at all because they had already killed Christ by then. But their brand, okay? Missionaries established churches, schools, hospitals. Notice these industries, right? One of the most important forms of propaganda was religious art. The church commissioned countless works of art that depicted biblical scenes and Catholic saints. And perhaps the most powerful form of propaganda used by the church was its control of the education system. Where do you see some changes going on in the news now with these aryan-minded people in education? They're trying to erase the civil rights movement from history books. They don't even want to mention, what Harriet Tubman was about, but they still gonna talk about her. Like, how can you do that? That was the whole purpose of Harriet Tubman. But they just want to, I guess, trot her out like a pony and not really talk about what it is she was working on. But they're lies for the purpose of subjugating people, basically. The Catholic Church's use of propaganda during the spiritual conquest, that's what they called it, spiritual conquest of any indigenous populations that they ran into as they went to and fro over the planet. the spiritual conquest of the New World. Here's some negative ways that the propaganda affected the people that they were preaching to. The church's use of religious art and literature often presented indigenous peoples as primitive and in need of salvation, meaning they were naturally demonic. They had to be saved. I want you to take notes. Number one, demonic. You're naturally demonic. Okay, let's go. The church's portrayal of indigenous religions was painted as pagan, heathen, contributed to the erasure of indigenous cultures and traditions. Remember my last video, I talked about erasure. Anyway, back to the subject more closely at hand. Here we go. Some Catholic missionaries were accused of using violence. Okay, that's on that spectrum, the genocide spectrum, right? Violence. That's coming up after propaganda. So, one of the things that I read that the missionaries would do is to resort to withholding food. And I was like, how do you go from somebody coming to your house to them withholding food from you? So I thought it was worth an adventure. Like to hear it go.
Colonialism violently altered the way people lived, and food was used as a tool of colonization. Here are 3 examples of how. Christopher Columbus first landed in the Americas in 1492. As the Spanish began to colonize parts of Latin America, they came into contact with the Maya, Aztecs, and other indigenous groups. These groups had a thriving agriculture and were growing everything from pumpkins and chilies to avocados. But the Spanish, whose diet was mainly bread, meat, and wine, saw the indigenous diet as inferior because they believed non-Europeans were inferior. The only meat available was guinea pig, and the Spanish associated it with Indians. And so Europeans brought domesticated animals such as cows, sheep, and pigs on their second ship in 1493. There were no natural predators, and the Spanish allowed them to graze over indigenous land and eat whatever crops they wanted. These traditional farm animals grew to crazy numbers. The animals were eating their crops, and their land was also confiscated so the Spanish could grow grapes and wheat. The indigenous people became malnourished and even starved until they began to consume European foods for survival. But British settlers drove the bison to near extinction. They believed that the extermination of the buffalo was a solution to the Indian problem. To control and colonize the land, they needed to control Native Americans and put them in reserves. And the easiest way to do this was to cut off their major source of food. Bison were hunted for their meat, and skins were used for tents. And so bison were mercilessly hunted by British settlers and left on the plains to rot. At one point, there were 30 million bison on the plains, and by the end of the 19th century, there were only a few hundred left in the wild.
So that answered my question. They messed up their food supply. First, since they were in a minority, they used propaganda against the people, on the people directly. They told them that you are not like us, but you need to be like us, you need to be saved, and go along with what we want or else we're going to beat you, blah, blah, blah. And then if you still don't do it, okay, we're going to kill you. And so when they're in the minority, they haven't taken control of a central government, then they just cut off your food supply. That's a form of committing genocide. You're killing a mass number of people based on who they are. Okay. So, I got my question answered and I was thoroughly disgusted. So, moving on. Let's fast forward about 300 years, whatever, to Mr. Goebbels, Hitler's minister of propaganda. He's got another title, but who cares? Because what he's talking about is not lies necessarily. He's talking about how the human mind works. Repetition to the human brain, it's like irresistible, right? And remember, tell a lie big enough and repeat it. Keep repeating it. And people will come to believe it. Not only will people come to believe it, the person repeating a lie will eventually come to believe it. These are the effects, the human psychological effects of repetition on the human mind. Repetition it's good for learning. It makes it so that you can remember information. But repetition can also have what they call the illusory truth effect. The illusory truth effect. Repeated exposure to a statement, even if it is false, increases the likelihood of people perceiving it as true. For example, if a person is repeatedly exposed to a particular viewpoint or perspective, they may be more likely to interpret new information in line with that perspective. Meaning that even when they get new information, they've been primed to remember it a certain way. They've been primed to categorize it in their brain a certain way. Persuasion. Repetition makes persuasive messages more effective by reinforcing key points and making them memorable. It's a form of brainwashing. And the human mind is predisposed to being brainwashed because that's part of how humans learn. And we survive by learning. And so this guy, Goebbels, he was just really telling you to tap into these very basic tenets of the human mind and just lie. What did he say? If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. But the truth is, the person repeating the lie will also come to believe it.
The ultimate goal of fire hosing isn't to pass lies off as truth. It's to rob concepts like facts and reality of their power.
No, it isn't truth. Truth isn't truth.
Just stick with us. Don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news.
Propaganda is used to accomplish a plethora of devious purposes to bring harm to and violence against the targeted population. Dehumanization. Depict the target as animals, monsters, grotesque to look at, dehumanizing them and making it easier to justify mistreatment or violence against them. Stereotyping. Stereotype the target as violent, criminal, or lazy, perpetuating irrational fear of them and negative perceptions of them in society. Scapegoating. Blame the targeted population for societal problems such as poverty, crime, and drug abuse. They are perceived as an expense, costing the economy and taxpayers money. Fear-mongering. Propaganda is used to propagate fear-evoking conspiracy theories, to spread lies and misinformation about the target, such as the idea that the targeted population is plotting to harm people of no color or take over the country. Polarization. propaganda is used to create division and polarization in society by portraying them as enemies of the wider population, leading to further marginalization and discrimination. Disinformation. Propaganda is used to spread false information about the targeted population, such as the idea that Black people are more prone to criminal behavior or that they are less intelligent than other groups, making it easier for discriminatory laws and policies to be enacted. The ultimate purpose of propaganda against a segment of a population beyond discriminatory laws and policies to be enacted against them is to incite state-mandated violence against them or mass murder of them.
As we go deeper into the southern United States, as we turn to Mississippi, where white Republican state lawmakers are attempting to essentially create an unelected superstructure to oversee the Black majority capital city of Jackson. This week, the state's majority white Republican-led state Senate passed its version of a bill by the majority white and passed last month by the majority white and Republican-led House that would allow Mississippi's Supreme Court Chief Justice, who is white, to hand-pick local judges in Jackson. Prosecutors and public defenders will be selected by the state attorney general, who also is white. Jackson has the highest percentage of Black residents of any major city in the United States. Supporters of House Bill 1020 claim it would make Jackson safer. Democratic Mississippi Senator John Horn disputed this ahead of Tuesday's vote on the revised bill.
Senator Carter made the point that crime is on the rise in Jackson, and he's correct. But to Senator Barrett's point, there is absolutely no empirical data, no evidence that adding these temporary appointed judges will do anything to stem the rise in crime in Jackson. There's no data.
Both versions of House Bill 1020 would expand the role of the Capitol Police, which has no oversight board and has not been transparent in reporting officer-involved shootings. Last year, the Capitol Police shot 3 people in a 6-week period, including Jalen Lewis, an unarmed 25-year-old Black man and father of 2.
Where you say solving the problem is taking the vote away from Black people.
A Jim Crow-style law was passed by the Mississippi House, where a conservative, mainly white, supermajority in the state house voted to create a separate court system and expand a police force within the city of Jackson, the blackest city in America. 83% of voters in Jackson are Black. However, they will get no say in how these new positions will be filled. All statewide elected offices are currently occupied by whites. No Black Mississippian has held statewide office since the brief period of Reconstruction after the Civil War. 1/3 of Mississippi's population is Black, yet the state has only 1 Black congressman due to gerrymandering. This is one of at least 8 other bills that have come up in the state legislature targeting Jackson. After a public outcry, the Senate passed an amended bill that instead gave the Capitol Police jurisdiction over Jackson and allowed for 5 state-appointed judges instead of a separate court system. Activists from the Poor People's Campaign are mobilizing and are calling on people from across the country to join them in their fight against modern-day Jim Crow.
Jackson deserves more. These young people deserve more. We deserve a city that looks out for its people, and we deserve a state that isn't in its interest of power and demand. We deserve to control our city, and our young people deserve to be viable in this city, and we're going to fight until we get it right.
I'm so fucking scared. It has just come to my attention because I didn't know about it just until today. In Mississippi, there was just a law passed like 5 days ago that the Jim Crow laws are being reinstated. That shouldn't be happening at all. And I know you may be wondering, this is like not my normal content on here, but I'm sorry, and I just have to make this known because what the fuck? What the actual fuck? Why I really don't understand why people do not like me, do not like us because of my color of skin. I don't understand. I really don't understand. What the fuck did I do?
Thank you, Chairman.
And thank you, Representative Powers, for bringing this. I think it's a very good idea. And I was just wondering about, could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also. And also, I would like to sign on to your bill, sir. Thank you.